feel so matching today. Hi Puzzles and Pieces, it's Jessica from Multiplicity and me, ending that pesky old stigma of DID. Today's video has been chosen and voted for by our amazing patrons with the title, How to Stop Feeling Guilty About the Self or Angry About Abusers. I felt like there would have to be more than one video made on a topic like this because you've both got the subject of guilt and anger, so I felt that focusing on the overarching theme of blame would tie things up really nicely. Today is essentially another self-help or self-therapy video, very similar I guess to the grounding box one that you guys may have seen before. I'm really happy to hear that so many people really enjoyed being so proactive, I guess, about managing mental health and obviously finding those little toolkits and hacks and things that we can do to help ourselves, because of course not everyone has access to therapy. So I hope today's video helps just as much as our grounding box video. Fingers crossed. Okay, so a brief background. I was about to start my final year in postgraduate psychotherapy and then I had my baby. You know, also hindsight, I think it made me step back and realise that I had to kind of go through my own trauma before I helped other people with their trauma. But in those couple of years that I was a trainee psychotherapist, I found what I learned was so helpful, not only just for my clients, but for me too. In fact, when you learn techniques, that's how you started. You had to try and apply the technique to yourself first. You'd then role play with your peers in the class, and then you would take that out into the field to actually do that on a client. So I suppose the bottom line is it's really empowering to learn these techniques and essentially be kind of your own therapist, obviously as much as possible. An obvious disclaimer is that not every technique will work for everyone or every situation. It's also only advised to be your own therapist, really for low-level, ongoing maintenance support. So if you are struggling with bigger problems, please make sure to reach out to a certified mental health professional or someone who's very supportive who can help you. And of course, please do take everything that we say with a pinch of salt, as we do not proclaim to be professionals, only someone who has had professional experiences. Anyway, let's get started. Okay, so this was genuinely one of my favorite tools. I remember using this on a client and witnessing this incredible light bulb moment. And then a year later in group therapy for trauma, I ended up using it again on myself as part of the class. I had the same strong reactions as some of the clients that I worked with, and of course the experience that we had learning that technique as psychotherapists. It was really, really interesting. So please, before you try this on yourself, make sure that you have a safe person who can support you through this, and have, of course, plan some self-care afterwards, as this may stir up some reactions. So here is a pre-warning, and of course you do not have to try this at all if you do not feel comfortable. Your comfortability matters the most, and like I said, please take everything that we say or do with a pinch of salt, okay? Okay, I have lost my whiteboard. I don't know where it is. Paper instead, good old paper and pen. Meet the responsibility pie. Responsible. Sadly, it's not edible, but hopefully it will be just as satisfying. This delicious mind pie was created by Greenberger and Podesky, who are some of kind of the leading experts, I guess, within the counselling field. And this pie encourages people to think about who or what else may have contributed to a negative situation. Sometimes those who've experienced a difficult situation may assume that they are predominantly at fault, and then of course that they feel ashamed, they feel guilt, they carry anger, and shame is a binding emotion that basically latches onto other emotions and really stirs them up. It makes things worse. So if we can kind of untangle some of that shame in the background, hopefully then it'll be able to allow somebody to recover a little bit better or let go of things that were holding them back. And that's what this amazing pie is all about. So to stop this harbouring, this pie essentially can be a really handy tool to self-reflect on those difficult circumstances and give us a far more analytical view of who's ultimately responsible. Hopefully then shifting the blame from us and helping us let go of some of the anger, the shame and the guilt that follows. Of course, for confidentiality purposes, I will certainly be not using any of my previous clients' examples, but neither do we feel particularly comfortable giving an example of our own, because obviously that's very personal it ties in people in our life who aren't necessarily involved in this channel. So instead, we're going to take the example from one of my old textbooks. If you're curious about these as well, all the links will be in the description below as to what books and references I'm using. So the example they've given in the book is actually weight related, so please bear this in mind, as this obviously may be an upsetting subject for some people. And I hope that you'll see how this pie can be used in a lot of different situations, not just about things like weight. It can be used for trauma, it can be used for any situation that you feel guilt or blame or shame for. Many survivors often say, well, you know, if I hadn't done this or if I hadn't done that, what would have happened to me wouldn't have happened to me. Maybe if I didn't do this, stuff wouldn't have happened, it's my fault. And this aims to kind of put that into perspective. So I'm going to go through this example with you guys step by step. If you feel comfortable, you can follow along too. Make sure you pause when you need to, as in a real life therapy session. Obviously your therapist would give you time to come up with ideas, plans and thoughts and to make amendments. But again, please stay alert and aware of your triggers, practice self-care and have someone supportive near you or around you or at the end of the phone if you need it. Okay, so it says, Rosie first draws a pie. She feels blame and shame for the fact that she's overweight, which has fueled self-loathing and depression. The therapist initially asks her on a percentage, how much of this is her fault? And she tells the therapist that it is 100% her fault. It is 100% her fault that she's overweight. The therapist then prompts Rosie to think about what else may have contributed towards her current weight. And although Rosie struggled at first, she began then to generate a list. So at this stage, if you're following along, think of a situation that you feel responsible for. Write on a percentage scale to 100%. How much of that, what happened, is your fault? Just first number that comes to mind, just pop it down. Okay, so after you've written that then, and you can put it inside the circle if you like, you can mark it 100%, 90%, whatever you figure that you're around. And after you've written that, think about what else may have contributed to your event. Make a bullet point list next to the pie. This may take some time and evoke some difficult thoughts and emotions, so obviously please take your time. So Rosie managed to come up with an 8 bullet point list. If you're struggling for ideas or wondering how this is laid out, this is how Rosie does it. She said, the food industry, which packages and advertises food to make it so appealing. My depression, which leads me to comfort eat. My parents who were unsupportive so that I turned to comfort eating. My mother who was always dieting but fed me the food she craved, which made me an overweight child. The children who teased me for being fat, which triggered my obsession with weight. My dance school, which indoctrinated us with the idea that only thin is acceptable and contributed to my obsession with weight. My obsession with weight, I am preoccupied with food. And my aunt, although I love her dearly, who tried to cheer me up with chocolate treats, which is probably why I find chocolate particularly tempting and comforting. Sometimes for people, just stopping here may be enough. If it's already proving too difficult, this is a stage you can already stop. You've made your list and you can see that you are not the only person at fault. But if you feel ready, you can draw another pie next to your first pie, where you wrote down whatever percentage you felt to blame for, and then add a percentage next to each of those bullet points that you made. Rosie's ratings were the following. So she gave the food industry 5%, her depression was 10%, her parents 40%, her mother 10%, the children 10%, her dance school 5%, her weight obsession 15%, her aunt 1%, and herself 4%. So the pie looks very, very different before and after. So this was Rosie's self-blame at the beginning of the session, and by the end of the session she only attributed actually 4%. She realized it is not all her fault. There are so many things that contribute to difficult situations, and it's really empowering to realize, actually, you know what? It's not all my fault. The aim is, of course, to try and do a little bit of math to total it up to 100%, but don't worry particularly if this doesn't equate fully. If you get the picture by simply filling in the lines. So totaling it up, you can see the before and after. See my great craft of pie. This is how Rosie felt to begin with, and here's how she ended after she realized that there's more than just her that contributed to her problem. What often happens with clients who come in with a lot of self-blame, it's how much blame they put on themselves initially is significantly higher than how it ends up, because they live in a world where they're told, actually, you know what, it did happen to you and it was you, and that's going to make it feel like it's totally somebody's fault. But then they realize as they go on is that there's far more contributing to the situation than just them. And if you have any self-doubt with your answers, you are more than welcome to go back and change them until you feel it's right. But hopefully what you'll find is that the ending percentage is significantly lower than the percentage you originally estimated for yourself. So when Rosie compared her responsibility pie from how it started versus how it ended, she realized that only 4% really was personal blame. Hopefully some out there you'll also find a similar result for your initial expectations to the reality of the situation, and hopefully that'll help relieve some of the blame and guilt, fear and anger that you may feel. And the hope is that realization will help support you in letting go of some of those emotions and help you to recover and move on. And if you're attributing this specifically to DID, you can of course do this with as many parts as you like, any parts that feel comfortable to, of course, as they may all have different perspectives on what factors contributed to a situation. They may come up with some things that you hadn't thought of, and this may also help uncover the parts who particularly feel responsible about the event, which then gives the system that foresight on who to support and who to help and who to kind of try and get through this, because obviously it's really, really difficult holding on to those emotions for so long. And that is another puzzle pieced together, or I suppose pied together. I really hope this has been helpful for you guys. Please do let us know if you feel comfortable to. If you attempted this and kind of what your before and afters were. Did it help? Did this exercise help? And how do you feel now that you've completed the task? And of course, my hope is that the end result will help you displace some of those emotions that you may feel to yourself or to say one particular person. And remember, please treat yourself to some self-care and seek a professional perspective wherever possible. Okay, that's everything for now. Thank you guys. Bye.